Alright, I am back with another video, and today we're doing another character build, meaning that I'm building a character from a popular piece of media. And today we're doing the long-requested John Constantine from DC Comics, a personal favourite of mine. His kind of character archetype is one of my favourites, being a magic user in a modern society, who is also, British, so, and also, very badass and kind of charismatic and all that. I really like the character. The only problem is when I try to build him in BG3, I look at the list of all the things I have to try and put into one character, and I kind of just shut down at the thought of it, but I've given it my best effort. However, this build is definitely going to be one of those inspired by John Constantine things, because I'll be honest, in 12 levels, we're not getting every single thing that John could possibly do, because in order to do that, you would either make a much weaker build than what could otherwise be possible, or you would also just not really get everything anyway. You'd just be building a very weird mismatch of like different classes and all that, and it's not going to work very well. And I'll be honest, looking at this build, the thing that I've managed to come up with, I am quite proud of. I do think it works overall. You are going to have to do a couple of things if you want to optimize it properly in order to get the absolute most out of it, which I'll get a little bit more into later. But overall, I feel like with the research I was able to do on the character and the amount of things that he can do that I was somehow able to cram into this, like, I'm honestly quite impressed. But it's probably not going to be exactly what people are looking for, because, spoiler alert, there's no Warlock levels in this, and I know people, especially people who've read Hellblazer, they definitely would have expected Warlock here. And there is kind of an option to go Warlock instead if you want, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit more towards the end. So, without further ado, let's get into the build. Obviously, the goal for this build was to kind of make a character that as you progress through the game, you will kind of start to feel more and more like you're playing Constantine. Which means I wanted to kind of get certain aspects in there. Namely, Constantine's backstory, which kind of had him pegged at one point as being a singer in a band. So we're going to make a bard today. Now, look, listen, I know, I've made a ton of bards, and I'm making John Constantine a bard because A, it does make sense with his backstory, and B, bard kind of gets everything that we need a bit easier than trying to do a mishmash of classes. Again, bard is just one of the most versatile classes in the game, and it is going to get us a lot of the stuff that John himself would have. But don't worry, we are going to be picking up some multiclassing here, but it's going to give us a bit more to work with. So, starting off with bard, we are going to get a few things. Namely, we're going to be playing as a human, because John is a human. That is going to give us access to civil militia, giving us light armour proficiency, as well as weapon proficiency with spears, pikes, and halberds and glaives. So if you want to use those, you absolutely can. As well as human versatility, giving us an additional skill. I wanted John to be very skilled in a lot of things, and I also wanted him to be charisma based. My initial plan was actually to try out Divine Soul Sorcerer, but the way that mod works in BG3 unfortunately has some issues with Mistress Spells, in which the fact that it's technically not compatible with each other, which is a bit of a shame. And the more I looked into John, I realised he doesn't actually do a lot of Radiant stuff, which caught me by surprise. I thought he did, but perhaps I was just wrong about that. But anyways, moving on, we do get to choose some cantrips at this point, and we are going to be picking up two things that I think make sense for John. Number one, Vicious Mockery. We do just want the basic psychic damage cantrip that we can get. However, if you want to take something else in place of this, that's fine, but I do think every time you play a bard, you really should take Vicious Mockery. It is just too fun not to do. And we're also going to take Prestidigitation because it is something Constantine actually canonically has. He has the little minor Prestidigitation style kind of magic tricks, so I think it does make sense to bring this one along. Next up for your spells. This build, by the way, is probably where you're going to be replacing spells the most probably out of any of my builds. As we're going to be leveling up in Bard, you'll have the opportunity to replace these kind of lower level, maybe not quite as fitting spells with much more appropriate spells that have come from the higher levels. So we're only actually by the end of this build going to have one first level spell, which I find kind of funny. I basically trained all of them out. But these are the spells I started with. I started with Speak of Animals, Dissonant Whispers, Heroism, and Command. Speak of Animals is just a great roleplay spell that you can keep if you want to, and I feel like Magic Caster being able to talk to animals is not too far-fetched, but I think you can skip this one if you don't want it. You can take something else. Dissonant Whispers is going to be one of our main damaging spells. It's going to do psychic damage and can potentially frighten creatures. John does have some kind of like charming effects overall, but again, you might not think this is 100% necessary, but I do think it fits the build quite nicely. Heroism also works for John. He's a cocky bastard who doesn't really get scared in the face of whatever demon or devil he's up against, so being able to make yourself immune to frightened and give yourself a little bit of tankiness every turn does work for me. And finally, Command is just a generally great spell that is added to the Bard spell list thanks to the 2024 revisions. So you can grab Command here as well to allow the creature to flee, move closer, freeze, or drop to the ground, or drop its weapon. Basically, you can give it a bunch of mental commands. John is able to charm people, convincing them to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do, or convince them that things have happened when they actually didn't, like John paying his rent. So Command, in my opinion, does make sense. For your starting instrument, pick whatever you like, it really doesn't matter. You're going to be unequipping it immediately because John was the singer, so you're going to be using your voice to cast your spells. And finally, the ability scores. Now, we are going to be using some items to help out with our ability scores in this build, so I'll get into that now. Strength, we don't need, we're going to keep that at 8. Dexterity is at 16 because it's going to help with our armor class, which is going to stop us from getting hit, as well as work with a weapon that we're going to be using a bit later. Constitution is at 14. Would like this a bit higher? Feel free to make it a bit higher. Swap Dex and Con around if you prefer, but our concentration saves are still going to be pretty safe because we're going to be able to do a lot of manipulation of the dice rolls on that sort of thing, as well as we're going to have advantage on concentration saving throws by the time we're done here. Intelligence is at 8, however that is going to change when we equip the Warped Headband of Intellect a bit later to give us a 17 of intelligence. Why? I'll talk about that in a bit. Wisdom is going to be at 10, I would like this a bit higher, but it's better than nothing, and Charisma is at 17 because we're going to be bumping this up with a half feat later. As for our skill proficiencies, John is a very clever guy in a lot of different ways. I've gone with the, I believe it's the criminal background to give us stealth and deception, or charlatan. It's criminal or charlatan, one of the two. You'll be able to figure it out. And for our bard proficiencies, I've gone with investigation, intimidation, and persuasion, picking up sleight of hand from our human proficiency. Basically, having all of the main pillars of social interaction does make sense to me for a build that is based on John Constantine. He's a very charismatic guy and is able to worm his way out of a lot of deals and situations. We've also taken investigation because he is an investigative person. He kind of is a, almost like magic detective in some cases. So I feel like it does make sense to have this here. And again, thanks to the Warp Headband of Intellect, this is going to be a pretty high stat for us. Stealth and deception just come naturally with the background. Stealth makes sense in my opinion, and deception obviously does. And sleight of hand is just great because, again, we're a magician. We're going to be performing all sorts of incantations with sly hand movements and such like that, and maybe even being able to cast things subtly. Except I didn't take sorcerer in this build. Again, I know, no sorcerer, no warlock. I'm doing this completely wrong, aren't I? Let's keep going. At level 2, we're actually going to be taking a quick dip out of Bard. Don't get me wrong, you could just keep going all the way in Bard, actually, maybe even pick up a Warlock dip or a Sorcerer dip here or there if you feel like you want some extra cantrips and the like. However, I'm going to be suggesting, and stay with me on this, we multiclass into Wizard. Now, hear me out here. Even though, as I said, we are using the Warped Headband of Intellect, which is going to give us a 17 in our intelligence, which is going to be perfectly good for what we're trying to do here. But the reason I want to take Wizard is because John Constantine didn't just get all of his powers like that. He didn't actually get most of his abilities from the demon blood he got infused with, which gave him basically hell powers, or the fact that he, just got it because he's naturally gifted. No. John studied. He learned how to use magic. He is a wizard, not a sorcerer. They call him a sorcerer in the comics, but no, he learned how to do this shit. He's a wizard, and this is going to give us an interesting opportunity here. Wizard is going to allow us to learn spells from scrolls, meaning that if we're playing as a character inspired by Constantine, who is just starting out, this will give us the opportunity to go across the game, picking up as many scrolls as we can, picking up as many spells as we can, allowing us to actually learn as we go. Now, I know what you're thinking, but then having basically a 16 as our primary spellcast, as one of our primary spellcasting stats, isn't going to go well into the late game. Again, I've got a solution for it, just stay tuned. But at level 1 of Wizard we are going to gain a few things, including some cantrips. Now John has pyrokinesis, so we're going to go with Firebolt. We also can pick up some other things, like say, Friends, because he is able to use Charming Magic, so we can pick that up here. As well as something else, basically pick whatever you like. He is an illusionist as well, so I do think Minor Illusion could also work here. However, Mage Hand also makes sense because he does have telekinetic powers, which we'll get a bit more into later. But other things that could work well for this build are Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade, as we will be using a melee weapon a bit later on as well. Mind Spike can also be really good, another psychic damage attack that can give a penalty to saving throws, which could help with a lot of the spells that we're going to be picking up. There's a ton of different options for you here, so pick whatever strikes your fancy. Next up for our spells, we do have a lot of options to pick from, and even though we're going to be able to only equip one at a time until we get the Warped Headband of Intellect, we can pick up the stuff that is going to make sense for John, namely Shield. Yes, I always take the spell, it's one of the most powerful spells in the game, however it actually does make sense. John is listed as being able to create magic wards that protect him from harm. Shield is literally that. We're also going to be taking Chromatic Orb to give us both a fire and lightning attack, since John is capable of both pyro and electromancy. We're also going to be able to pick up Catapult. Again, John does have telekinetic abilities in some shape or form, so Catapult, just being able to freaking lob things at people, also does fit the bill here. I would also going to recommend Absorb Elements. In a similar fashion to Shield, he's able to create these protective wards that are able to absorb energy and deal it back at the enemy, and that's what Absorb Elements does, taking half damage from an elemental attack and then dealing an additional 1d6 of that element on a follow-up attack. He's also able to summon things from various different planes of existence beyond his own, usually hell, so we can pick up Find Familiar to get a small animal companion, which again fits on theme for the character, at least in my opinion. Again, I'm not 100% an expert on the character, this is just what I was able to get from my research and the little bit of Constantine knowledge that I had before. And finally, I would say it's entirely up to you what you want to grab. Charm Person, Cause Fear, Sudden Awakening, Gift of Alacrity, Burning Hands, all of those could work. It's entirely up to you. Maybe even the old Reliable Magic Missile also works for you. It's a pick your favourite situation from here on out, whatever you think makes the most sense for the character. I believe Charm Person or Sleep could also work really well. So pick your favourite. It's most likely going to get replaced by other prepared spells when we get access to scrolls anyway. We're basically just filling up our menu here. And as you can see, here are the prepared spells that I learned from scrolls. These are quite important for what we're going to want to do later. These are kind of the main things that I wanted to grab, but I'll talk more about spells in a bit, but I'll go over them here since we have them in front of us. One of them is Find Familiar Quasit, allowing us to get Shovel, basically, which is a, demonic hellspawn type creature, which is just perfect to have this funny talking companion to go along with Constantine. Makes sense. We've also got, as a big end game spell, Disintegrate. John does have a disintegration spell, so it makes sense to pick this up as kind of a final thing from our study, allowing you to do a bunch of force damage, and if the target hits zero hit points, they just are completely disintegrated. Another one is Telekinesis, again playing more on that telekinetic ability. We also grab Lightning Bolts here to deal 8d6 lightning damage on a line, because again, electrokinesis. John can also use Necromancy magic, so Animate Dead also works here if you want another body on the board. Blink is great because John does also have the ability to blink in and out of existence temporarily. Like, are you seeing how much crap I had to fit on one build? He could do so many things, including teleporting, which is why we have Misty Step and eventually Dimension Door as well. Did you get all that? Good. Let's keep going. Now, I will say what I'm about to do here is optional, but I am going to be taking a second level of wizard here. Not only is this going to give us a little bit more to work with when it comes to our prepared wizard spells, it is also going to allow us to pick a subclass. Now here's the thing, and this was an interesting thing that I was reading. John has an do I say John or do I say Constantine? Constantine has a massive amount of luck. He basically has the protagonist power to basically kind of always come out on top no matter what. It's really overpowered, but he kind of used it to, like win gambling debts. Like good luck basically follows him. And because he also uses divination magic, like being able to track enemies with like cigarette smoke and such like that, we're going to go with divination. Again, It just makes perfect sense. Not only are we going to get divination scrolls a little bit cheaper, not that we're going to be using divination magic all the time, but again, it is a thing that John does. We're also going to be able to get access to portent. After each long rest, we create 2 random portent die. During the day, you can use your reaction to change the die roll of any attack or saving throw rolled near you to one of those portent die. So say, for example, I rolled a 2 on one of my portent die at the start of the day. I cast Fireball on an enemy, and they make their saving throw with a score of 19. We say, no, actually, you just rolled a 2, spending that portent die that we rolled as a 2, and now they fail the save. That's basically how portent works, if you didn't already know. Next up, couple more spells. Pick whatever you like, it really doesn't matter. As I said, I've made cases for a lot of different spells here, so just choose what works for you. So now that we've got some of our luck bending abilities out of the way and the ability to learn spells from scrolls, we're going to go back over to Bard. Bard at level 2 is going to give us Jack of all trades, which again works perfect for Constantine, giving us more ways to pass checks. We're also going to get a 3rd short rest through Song of Rest, which is just awesome. We do also get to pick another level 1 spell at this point. It's a pick your favourite situation once again. Fairy Fire is a nice spell in general, so we'll take that, but again, most likely going to get trained out pretty soon. And that time is now with level 5 of the whole build, but level 3 of Bard. Not only are we going to get access to level 2 spells at this point, so we are going to be doing some replacing here, we're also going to gain access to our subclass. Now the question is, what subclass is John going to be? Well, technically, if you wanted to go the full luck manipulator route, College of Valor does also make sense if you want to go the more support route. College of Swords is great if you want to focus on something that I'll be getting into later, but honestly, I think for John Constantine, the best subclass you can pick is College of Law. You're going to get Cutting Words, allowing you to use John's famous insults in the middle of battle to re-roll enemy attack rolls, basically giving them a negative bardic inspiration. You can kind of mess with their saving throws and their attack rolls and all in a similar way to Portent, actually. As well as with that, you're also going to get things like Magical Secrets at level 6, allowing us to learn more spells, which, trust me, we're going to want. This build is definitely more of a spellcaster than anything else. It's a support spellcaster build, but is still able to deal out massive damage when necessary. But of course, another great feature of College of Law Bard is that we get to pick some new skills and skill expertise. I'm going to say pick up Arcana, History, and Religion, as these are all things John would have knowledge in, and again, with our higher intelligence score coming up in a bit, we're going to be really good at these checks. You also get to pick 2 expertise, and it's entirely up to you what you want to pick here. It really doesn't matter. I would say probably Persuasion would be your best bet, and I'm actually going to put expertise into Arcana, because again, he is kind of a magical genius, so I do think that makes sense to grab. Next up, we do get to pick a level 2 spell here, and I think there's quite a few things that make sense. First up would be Hold Person. John does have binding magic, so it makes sense to pick this up. We also do have access to invisibility. Yes, he can do that too. We also have access to, I believe, where is it? See invisibility, because yeah, he can like see and communicate with ghosts and like sense where they are. So I think see invisibility is one of the best ways to get that. We can also grab mirror image. He's able to use sort of illusion magic, but also is able to like use astral projection, and this is about as close to that as we're going to be able to get. If you really want to lean into the luck manipulation side of things as well, Silvery Barbs is basically the lucky feat in a spell. More on that later, but I think one of the more powerful things we can pick up at this point is Hold Person, so I'm going to be grabbing that here. And as well, we are going to be replacing a spell, one of our lower level spells that maybe doesn't make as much sense. I'm going to say Fairy Fire for now, and we are going to replace that with maybe Heat Metal. That's another pyromancy thing, and it's something a bit more unique to Bard. You can pick that up here if you want, but I do think a lot of the luck manipulation on this build is actually really, really important, so we're going to grab Silvery Barbs, which I know I said I wasn't not going to take this on too many builds, but it's too good, man. It's too good, and it does fit what we're going for here, so we're going to grab that. Next up, at level 4, we do get to pick another cantrip. Here, I'm going to grab Mage Hand, because again, it's a bit of telekinesis. We're also going to pick up another spell at this point. I'm going to grab the aforementioned Mirror Illusion, and we're going to replace another spell. I'm going to say let's get rid of Speak with Animals here, unless you want to keep it for roleplay reasons, then go ahead. Otherwise, now we could pick up something else, and like I say, we want invisibility. We want see invisibility. Like, there's gonna be a lot of chopping and changing of the spells here, guys. I would say, well, we could get greater invisibility later, or you could pick up invisibility from a ring, so maybe you don't need to take that one. See invisibility, though, would actually make a lot of sense for John. It's almost like his detect magic thing as well, so I think we're going to grab that here. We also get to pick a feat at this level, and we're going to scroll all the way down to the new Tasha's feat, and we're going to pick up, well, it's up to you. You can either go with Fey-Touched to grab Misty Step and a Divination or Enchantment spell of your choice. There's a few things you could grab here, so you'd obviously get Misty Step, which allows you to get John's teleporting a little bit earlier than you otherwise would in this build. Otherwise, you're most likely going to be learning it from a scroll, which Misty Step scrolls are quite common. But you can pick up something like Hex, Hunter's Mark, Compelled Duel, Bane, Bless, you can grab Speak with Animals again, Tasha's Hideous Laughter. There's a few things you can grab here, but what I ended up grabbing was Telekinetic. This is going to allow us to do the same thing, bumping up our Charisma to an 18, and also giving us the Mage Hand cantrip, so actually, we don't need to take it here, you can pick something else. Thunderclap could be good. So that's going to give you the Mage Hand cantrip. Also being able to, as a bonus action, you can telekinetically shove or pull an enemy closer to you. So you can push them away or pull them closer to you as a bonus action. It goes about 10 feet, which is going to help for a bit of battlefield control. Forced movement is really, really strong, especially if you can set up area of effect things. Partner this with your druid or your ranger that's casting things like spike growth, and you're going to have a good time. But if you feel like Fey-Touched is going to make a bit more sense for getting you Misty Step and such like that, then feel free. Also, at this point, you could also choose to pick up the Lucky Feat as well, which we'll be doing a bit later anyway, but here I want to round out that Charisma score to give us better Charisma casting, so we're going to go with Telekinetic here, or Fey-Touched, your choice. Or Shadow-Touched, that could also work. But anyways, at level 5 of Bard, we're going to gain access to Font of Inspiration. Now our Bardic Inspiration also recovers on a short rest, as well as our Bardic Inspiration has been improved to a D8. That improves Cutting Words and Bardic Inspiration, which is great. We're also going to gain access to level 3 spells at this point, and oh, we still have so much to choose from, but first we're going to pick up Glyph of Warding. Glyph of Warding is the most John Constantine spell in this game. It's literally making a sigil on the ground that triggers a trap. There needs to be kind of more like sigil-based casting in D&D as a whole, I think, but I guess flavor is king in tabletop and BG3, we don't really get that. But Glyph of Warding is going to give us access to a Fire AoE, Pyromancy, an Electric AoE, Electromancy, Sleep, so charming spells, Detonation to push people back, and like a Telekinetic Blast. This is a big all-in-one Constantine spell, so we're definitely picking that up here. We're also, guess what, going to replace a spell again, and I think I'm going to chuck Heroism out. Oh no, I'll chuck Command actually. We're going to chuck out Command, and instead we're going to replace that with the Slow spell, because guess what, John also has time powers. Yeah, he has Chronomancy, in which he has a blood magic spell that allows him to stop time entirely. We can't do that because we don't have access to the 9th level spell here. However, Slow is going to be the next best thing, allowing us to slow our enemies in time, making it so their AC and dexterity saves are reduced, their movement speed is reduced as well, and they can only take an action or a bonus action each turn, not both. It's one of the most powerful control spells in the game. We're absolutely going to take it. At Bard level 6, we're also going to gain access to our College of Law feature, Magical Secrets. We get to take another level 3 spell at this point, and it's entirely up to you what you want to take here. We've actually started to get a lot of the kind of Constantine spells at this point, so if you feel like you don't really need anything from here, then just kind of take your favourite. Overall, again, more charming magic is always good. Anything that lets you kind of manipulate the battlefield in some way, also good. Basically kind of just, again, pick your favourite here. I made a case for Heat Metal earlier because it's a kind of a more unique Pyromancy spell. It's a shame that it requires concentration, but it can really debilitate some enemies, so we're going to pick it up here. But now here's the big ticket item. Magical Secrets. Thanks to Mistress Spells and the 1D&D Spell List Revisions mod, we have access to a lot of things here. Again, a lot of them would work for Constantine. But again, one of Constantine's most iconic kind of pieces of imagery is his ability to use Pyromancy. He gets those like fire sigils and starts just chucking fire at people. So we're going to grab Fireball here to give us a big AoE fire damage attack. It's going to be one of our main damaging spells, and now at this level our DPS has turned up a lot. I say DPS, but that's not really the right term for this kind of game. You also have a bunch of other options available to you at this point. You could grab Darkness, Scorching Ray, Spirit Guardians, Haste, Hunger of Hadar. You can even grab cantrips like Eldritch Blast, because, again, John apparently has Eldritch Blast, like it was actually called that on the wiki. Don't know how accurate that is, perhaps they were just using the D&D name, but there's also things like, you know, Psionic Blast, Summon Lesser Demons, Jim's Glowing Coin. But the one thing I do want to pick up here that I think would be nice for John, and I know I'm using this spell too much, but it does make sense here, it's Summon Moonblade, because believe it or not, John motherfucking Constantine wields a weapon called the Moonblade. Sometimes. But yes, this allows us to conjure a magical short sword in our hand that can either be lit on fire or made freezing cold. We're obviously going to be choosing the fire option because that makes more sense for John. But even if you don't use it as a weapon, it's still going to increase your armor class by 1 and give you resistance to your chosen damage type. There's no reason not to have this on us. And again, the fact that it is the Moonblade just makes too much sense not to use, so I'm going to grab it here. But if there's something else here that you feel like would make more sense, then feel free to grab it. And again, we can also choose to replace another spell at this level if we want. So let's replace Heroism, and let's grab... Oh, what else did I grab from my spell list? I can't remember because there were so bloody many things. Let's see. There's things like Discordant Melody if you want a bit of thunder damage. There's things like Visibility or Knock. Knock could also work really well. I might pick up the basic Invisibility here because it is a thing that John can do. At level 7, we are going to be able to grab another spell, namely level 4 spells. And yeah, we have so many options available to us again. Mainly, we're going to be grabbing Dimension Door for John's teleporting abilities, because yes, he does have those in spades. We can also replace the invisibility that we just took in order to gain greater invisibility, the much upgraded version. Let's keep going, because I don't want this to be too long. At Bard level 8, we're going to gain access to another spell, and it is up to level 4. There's not really, I would say, too many other things that we need to grab here. We've got most of what John does, but in reality, he can do pretty much anything as it stands anyway. So there's a few cool things you could get here. Illusory Weapon, if you want another powerful illusion spell. You can go for things like Mesmer's Lullaby, if you want to do some hypnotizing. Rowlotham's Psychic Lance, I hope I pronounced that correctly. There are a few other things you can get here. I'm sure people who are more die-hard Constantine fans that aren't forgetting half the things they put on their spell list will be able to tell me exactly what I should and should not be taking. So I'll say this is a pick your favourite situation and just take what you like. I've always liked Freedom of Movement as a generally great buffing spell, so you can pick that up here. But there's things like Hypnotic Pattern, Fear, Bestow Curse, Confusion, Enthrall. Like, just take whatever you think works for you. We also do get to take another feat at this level, and I'll be honest, with some of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about later, I'm quite happy with keeping our Charisma at 18. And the fact that our Dexterity is at a decent score, our Constitution is okay, but we have ways of maintaining concentration, I think we're actually going to go ahead and take that lucky feat, giving us 3 luck points which we can use to gain advantage on attack rolls, ability checks, and saving throws. I might be playing more into this like John always has kind of great luck thing than I should do, but hey, we're going to do it, so we're grabbing lucky. At Bard level 9, we're going to be able to pick up level 5 spells, and here are the big ones. Namely, I want Hold Monster. It allows us to use John's binding magic to basically paralyze anything we like. We're also going to be able to replace another spell that we have. I don't know, whatever you think isn't that useful anymore, you can kind of choose to replace. To be honest, Invisibility is probably very, very niche, so you could probably take that out here and replace it with another really, really niche spell, but one that makes too much sense not to take. It's Planar Binding. Target another worldly creature and attach its consciousness to your own. It will follow and fight for you as an ally for 10 turns as long as you maintain concentration. So, if you happen to be in a fight with something that's not from the material plane, you can temporarily bind it to your service. That feels like a very John thing to do, but if you don't agree with me, there's plenty of other options here, like Dominate Person, Confusion, as I mentioned before. There's also, if we scroll down here, you can even grab Aid. That's apparently on the revised spell list for bards. Had no idea. But yeah, Planar Binding feels about right. And finally, at Bard level 10, we get a lot of good things. Namely, improved Bardic Inspiration to increase that to a D10, which is awesome. We're also going to gain access to another cantrip at this point. Take whatever you like, it really doesn't matter. We also do gain access to taking another spell. Entirely up to you what you want to take here. Dominate Person feels like it's just about right, though. We can also pick up another 2 spells from Magical Secrets up to level 5, which is going to allow us to get 2 more things that John absolutely loves. We can grab Banishing Smite or regular Banishment. You're going to want to take one, if not both of these. I did take both of these in my testing because I feel like they do have utility in certain situations. Banishing Smite allows you to either use your ranged weapon or a sword attack, of which we have both, to be able to deal an extra 5d10 force damage and possibly banish a target with 50 HP or less to another plane of existence for 2 turns. Or you can just take the regular banishment, which is a level 4 spell, which will just allow you to quickly banish them without having to spend that higher level spell slot. Personally, I think if you're going to take one, you might as well take Banishing Smite, and then you have room to pick something else. And there's a lot of different options here. There's Fast Step, allowing you to teleport to an unoccupied space you can see, good lord. There is Astral Disjunction, which is another way of allowing you to banish another enemy to a plane of existence as a reaction, which is kind of cool. There's Eldritch Blast. There's more summoning spells, but I'm going to grab Summon Greater Demon. Again, I feel like summoning a demon does make sense, again, as something Constantine may or may not do. Summoning Greater Demon is going to allow you to summon a powerful demon from the Abyss, which is also going to make Planar Binding more useful, because Summon Greater Demon makes it so that you have to maintain concentration in order to control it, otherwise it will turn against you. However, with Planar Binding, you can just get that control right back. So I feel like it does make a bit of sense to be able to do this, and yes, John does summon demons as part of his power set. It is a thing that he does. So we're going to grab Banishing Smite and Summon Greater Demon. We also get 2 more skill expertise. I'm going to grab Deception and I would say Sleight of Hand makes a lot of sense. You can also replace another spell at this point if you want, but I'm quite happy with our spell list as it stands. And that is the build. Overall, what you're going to be getting out of this is a ton of battlefield control and a ton of power. We have some pretty high horsepower spells like Fireball, Banishing Smite, even our cantrips will deal a decent chunk of damage. Glyph of Warding is also really great. We have a ton of versatility. We can summon demons, we can control people with our charming magic. We can make ourselves incredibly hard to hit with things like Mirror Illusion and our various ways of manipulating luck, whether that be through Portent, Lucky, Silvery Barbs, what have you. Battlefield control was slow, psychic damage with Vicious Mockery, the ability to turn invisible. We can completely trap people with things like hold person and hold monster, and with our additional wizard spells, if I jump over to that really quickly, you can grab a bunch of other things of utility, like Shield, Disintegrate for massive damage, Telekinesis for battlefield control, Misty Step for being able to do a bit of movement around the battlefield, and also whatever else you feel like taking at the time. It's really up to you. Let's grab that cheeky Quasit, shall we? And yeah, you're just going to get a ton out of this. However, obviously I didn't get everything that John can do. And if you want to go with a little bit of the Hellblazer comic series, this is what I'm going to suggest to you. Download the level 20 mod and put in 10 levels of Warlock. I know. What am I doing suggesting making a level 20 build? That's not what I'm about. And 99% of the time, you would be right. However, I'm not really willing to sacrifice anything that we've managed to gain here. I think this build is going to feel like you get that vibe of what John Constantine is about pretty goddamn well. And at level 12, this build does get you everything that you want. And my only issue with it being is that yes, it is kind of reliant on what scrolls you're able to find, but you need so few to really complete the feel that it's not so much of a bad thing. But honestly, taking those extra, 8 levels, I don't know why I said 10, I meant to say 8, taking those extra 8 levels in Warlock, getting those 2 extra feats to bump up your ability scores, getting Eldritch Blast and all the invocations that come with it, and more spell slots that are going to recover on a short rest, it feels pretty good. I've not personally tested this because, again, the reason I don't make level 20 builds is the fact that I do feel like they are a bit overpowered, but because the game is balanced around level 12. However, you could say you've injected yourself with that demon blood, like the blood infusion that Constantine actually got, and made a pact with the Fiend in the process, getting those fire powers from there, allowing you to retrain your magical secrets Fireball, and also pick a Pact of the Blade to make better use of the Moonblade, or Pact of the Tome to get a bunch of extra cantrips, freeing up some stuff there, because you could get Thorn Whip, because yes, Constantine also has druidic nature powers. I don't know. Like, it's too much to fit on one build, man. I'm just being real with you. Like, this was, in my opinion, the best I could do. And I'll be honest, I like this build. I really do. It might not be the most accurate Constantine build. People might build it differently as a Warlock, which, more power to you, but I do think this just kinda gets more of the Constantine stuff than a straight Warlock would. Although I could see Pact of the Fiend level 5, Wizard 1, and like maybe, I don't know, Draconic Bloodline 6 with the fire. Like, I can actually see that being a pretty solid build as well, so if you don't like this one, feel free to build that one instead. But overall, I do think this does get you a lot of what you want, and that idea of going through the game and learning things like the early days of Constantine, I feel like it does a better job. And again, you're running a powerful build here. Now, but I will say in my testing, I did find that in solo, this build does struggle a little bit. Like, you are very much luck dependent, and as much as you can like switch luck in your favor and kind of manipulate it to your will, that doesn't mean that you're just always going to avoid being hit. You are sometimes still going to get hit, and that can be a problem. But most of the time, you will be fine. You have so much battlefield control and such like that you'll mostly be okay. But anyways, as I said, if you really want to get that John Constantine feel, take this build and add 8 levels of Warlock to it, and go wild. Because John Constantine is one of the most overpowered characters ever made, as most comic book characters are, so, you know, just go with the flow on this one. Take that level 20 and feel like an absolute god of magic. But moving on, we also can talk about the equipment. Now obviously, for our melee weapon, we are going to be using Summon Moonblade. I've already gone over that. But for a ranged weapon, I felt like just grabbing the Near Misser could be fun. It's a magical crossbow that does exclusively force damage, which can be very helpful. It's a +1 crossbow overall, so it's not going to be your main attacking thing, but it's just nice to have anyway, because it works with ranged Banishing Smite. And it also comes with the ability to cast Magic Missile at level 3 once per short rest. So you just kind of have the ability to do that as well. As for the rest of the equipment, I've already talked about it. We have the Warped Headband of Intellect, setting your intelligence to 17. This is what allows us to prepare some of our wizard spells, and you are going to have to pick and choose what spells you want to bring when, but being able to prepare 5 instead of like 1 or 2 is a bit better. We're also going to go with the Cloak of Displacement. John has this strange ability that allows him to use a pocket dimension to temporarily store objects in, and he can use that to make objects like a sword, for example, that's about to hit him, phase into the pocket dimension and then back out, meaning that the sword never hit him. So Cloak of Displacement is going to give you blur at the start of each of your turns, meaning that enemies have disadvantage on attack rolls against you. Again, another bit of luck manipulation there. Which means that you're less likely to take damage, because you're using that pocket dimension to make things phase through you, and it's making you look all blurry at the same time. I don't know, it was one of the weirder abilities I had to try and grab, and Cloak of Displacement does that quite nicely. Moving on, we have the Spider Silk Armour, a bit of light armour that comes with a base 12 armour class, gives a +1 bonus to stealth check, but most importantly, advantage on Constitution saving throws. This is going to really help with our concentration, and it's going to give us a okay-ish AC of 16. We're meant to be a backline spellcaster for the most part that are supporting our allies by manipulating luck and dealing big damage with our spells from afar. We don't really want to be upfront and personal, but because we have so many ways of re-rolling enemy attack rolls and increasing our AC up to a 21 with shield, we're not too worried about having a 16 in our armor class, and that advantage on concentration saving throw checks, in my opinion, is going to be a lot more useful. So we're going to take that, but feel free to swap this out for something else, as a lot of our luck-based abilities, like Lucky, Important, and all that, do also work on our constitution saving throws, so pick your poison there, but I do think this is a solid option to have overall. Next up, the Wondrous Gloves, giving us an additional use of Bardic Inspiration, making it a total of 6, and increasing our armor class by 1. I mean, yeah, nothing wrong with that. It's pretty great. I would definitely take those. And finally, the Disintegrating Nightwalkers, because, yeah, of course I am. This means we cannot be enwebbed, entangled, or ensnared, and cannot slip on grease or ice. But more importantly, it gives us a usage of Misty Step that's not going to take up our spell slots once per short rest. So at the end of the day, if you don't find that Misty Escape scroll somehow, you still have access to this. Next up for our amulets, we've got 3 here, namely the Necklace of Elemental Augmentation. When one of your cantrips deals acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage, so for us it's going to be cold, fire, and maybe lightning if you decide to take Shocking Grasp, but mostly for us it's just going to be Firebolt, that's going to deal extra damage equal to our spellcasting modifier. So that's a bit nicer for us anyway. However, because we took that our last multiclass in Wizard, this might use our intelligence modifier. Again, I'll get more into that in a bit. Next up, the Ring of Blink. This is just another way to get one of John's abilities without necessarily having to find the scroll. It gives us access to Blink, which at the end of each of your turns you roll a d20, and on an 11 or higher, so about a 50% chance, you vanish into the ethereal plane, and while there, you cannot be harmed or seen in this world. Yet, John blinks in and out of the fabric of reality on occasion, so it does make sense to pick this up. And also we have the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel here. This allows you to get a little bit more out of the Moonblade, because a lot of our spells are illusion or enchantment spells, at least the more powerful ones. You can quickly smack someone with the Moonblade and still be able to use your bonus action to cast those spells. So it's just a way of getting a little bit of extra damage if you're planning to use one of those types of spells anyway. However, I do want to talk about these other amulets here, namely the Spellcrux amulet, which will allow you to restore up to a level 6 spell slot once per long rest, I should say, as a bonus action. So you can equip that, basically use 2 level 6 spells, and then unequip it and put this on. However, another thing you could do is in the very late game, when you get to Act 3 and you're able to enter the House of Hope, grab the Amulet of Greater Health. This will allow you to dump your Constitution and then set it to 23, and also gives you advantage on Constitution saving throw checks. That's going to make your HP way better, your concentration basically immortal, and then you can put those stat points into something else, like your intelligence, potentially freeing up your head slot. And because we have such high Constitution saving throws, that allows you to mess around with your armor slot as well. Put in more dex, put in more intelligence, put in more wisdom, put in more charisma. Choose whatever you want to do, whatever's going to make this build work for you. I would recommend picking this up in Act 3 to give this build a big boost, but if you'd rather put this on another character, this build can survive without it, like I said. For our camp clothing here, we are using the long coat and the camp boots from the Citizens Camp Clothing mod, coloured in the vanilla Sinful Red on Bone White, to give us a brown long coat with a white shirt, which is about as close to Constantine as it gets. It's a shame we can't get the tie. And yeah, that is the build, and overall, I'll be honest, I'm a bit mixed on this one. I'm not as much of an expert on John Constantine as I initially thought, just trying to do all this, and, well, I don't know, I feel like maybe the Warlock route would have been better, but overall, I do just think going to level 20 with this build is the best way to make John Constantine. Do what I've done here, then slap 8 levels of Warlock on top, and yeah, I mean, you've pretty much got it at that point. Which is a bit disappointing, but overall, I'm still happy with the build we managed to create. We've got our luck manipulating, spell casting, big damage dealing bard. And again, I love the whole thing of wizards being able to pick up spell scrolls even with a 1-level dip and still be able to cast them. I do have a gripe with this build, obviously, in the fact that it does require a lot of finagling to really get working and getting that feeling right. And it does rely a lot on luck of the dice, and again, we manipulate that as much as we can, but it's not always going to go in our favour, which means trying to take down things solo with this build is going to be a bit tricky. But that's why it is a pure spellcaster. It is meant to work with other builds. It is meant to work as part of a party. You control the battlefield, you manipulate it, you keep yourself up while helping your allies and then dealing big damage with things like Fireball and Disintegrate when you need to. Otherwise, you're perfectly fine just to sit in the back and do whatever you need to do. So, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm happy with this build, and I'm glad I took a gambit at it, foreshadowing, but otherwise, I maybe could have done better. But I want to get this video out for you guys, and I'm sure you guys can tell me of a different way of doing it in the comments down below, so let me know what you think of this build, and maybe I should take another swing at it with a remaster sometime in the near future. But anyways, that is going to do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.